Most churches don't ignore security because they don't care. They struggle because they don't know where to start. But the cost of not preparing is often greater than the cost of getting started. I want to welcome you to the Faith Secure podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Brown, the founder of Faith Secure, where we are watchful, prayerful, and prepared. The title of today's episode is The Cost of Inaction: Why Churches Fail to Prepare and What It Costs. Today's guest is Mr. Chris Maloney, founder of the Church Security Institute. Mr. Maloney is nationally recognized for his extensive experience training church security teams and helping churches move from uncertainty to structured preparedness. This conversation focuses on what happens when churches fail to prepare and how leaders can begin to change that. I want to welcome Mr. Chris Maloney to the podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you. Hold on here. Let me see. So we're going to get started here. With the first segment, sir, this is going to be an alley-oop to you, okay? We're going to talk about why churches struggle to get started, okay? And the opening question is, in your experience, working with churches, of course, why do so many struggle to take that first step in security and preparedness?
Yeah, I think primarily for a lot of churches, it starts with the actual church culture and the way they think about security teams. Of course, we prefer safety teams, but when you go to a church and you start to talk about, hey, we need to establish some sort of security team or some sort of safety team, suddenly what happens is that people's brains go right to chain link fences and German shepherds and cameras and
Right.
you know, a safety team member standing at the door with his arms crossed, scowling at people as they come in. And we just get this wrong idea, completely wrong picture of what a safety team actually is. And so just right off the bat, there's that pushback, if you will, from leadership, from people inside the church that basically says, this is God's house. We are welcoming. We are warm. We are hospitality first. We never want to turn back those that are seeking and the lost and the seeking, and so this whole idea of a safety team suddenly feels and looks, before we've even said much more than saying we need a safety team.
Right.
All of a sudden it's this like, this feels like it's anti-God. This is anti what we're here to do. And so I think that's one of the largest pushbacks for a great many churches out there.
Okay, so let me ask you, those reasons, I don't want to call them excuses, but those reasons or the trepidation that's caused when you talk about instituting a safety team, is it a lack of awareness or a lack of leadership clarity?
You know what? It's not a lack of awareness. You would have to be living in a cave somewhere to not know about what's going on in the world, right?
Correct.
We have the Minneapolis protests going on at the church, right? We have shooting events. There are organizations out there that track shooting events that happen at churches. They track crimes. The FBI statistics can be of some use too in that. So we know that these things are happening at churches. But here's the problem. So as a protecting minded person, we are convinced by stories of violence, of stories of disruption. We're motivated by crimes and stats. And that speaks to us as people with the heart of protection.
Absolutely.
The thing is our churches and our pastors aren't wired that way. They're the opposite. They're the absolute opposite. And so when we go to our pastor and say, hey, do you know that so many people died last year in churches? Do you know how many medicals occur and how much is stolen and embezzlement and all this other kind of stuff? We're speaking a language that makes sense to us, but not to them.
That's true.
They have a heart of a pastor. They are the heart of the shepherd. They're about nurturing people and growing them and discipling them and all these kind of things. And then we come in with a language that sounds insane to them. And so one of the things we have to do is we have to come in there and say, hey, pastor, Our job as a safety team is not to push people away. It's not to create fear. It's none of that. Our job as a safety team is
Mhm.
to maintain a safe environment so you can do what you need to do. We eliminate those distractions of safety and security while you reach out to the lost, while you disciple people.
That's right.
The idea is we eliminate distractions for you, Pastor. We take
That's
things
right.
off of your plate. We don't put things on your plate.
That's very well said. So would you say that there's a fear of overreacting that comes into play?
Yeah, I think pastors sometimes worry about that. It often comes down to the individual that's
Mhm.
proposing or discussing the safety team.
That's a good
Um,
point.
if they have a very guns first, active shooter mentality, I say this affectionately, this might offend some people. I call them gun guys.
Right.
They're highly enthusiastic. They really have a
Mhm.
calling to protect the congregation, but they come into that pastor's office and they're like, guns, guns, guns. And
Mhm.
so now the pastor's like, whoa,
Yeah.
am
Yes.
I going to trust this guy? Can I trust this guy
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
deal with a disruptive individual? And then they're going to go too far with it.
Yes.
As
Yes.
opposed to a little bit more wisdom is to go in there and say, hey, we're going to add to your hospitality team.
All right. All right. And see, that's something in my work as well, Mr. Maloney, is convincing them that they're not two separate paths, that security and safety works hand in hand with the ministry, that you can be hospitable, but also be watchful and be prepared.
Absolutely.
So, yes. Okay. So, we're going to pivot a little bit. We're going to deal with the reality of having untrained teams. Okay. So now I'm going to ask you, what risks do you see when churches rely on volunteers who are willing, okay, but they're not properly trained?
Yeah. So as you know, the reason a lot of churches or any organization for that matter gets sued, they get
Okay.
sued because they knew of a problem or should have known of a net problem, and then they failed to mitigate or address that problem.
Foreseeability, yes, sir.
Exactly, right? And so what happens is this is like, I'll give you an example. Let's just talk about fires. We know fires are a thing, right?
Yes. Yes.
And if there's a fire at your church and somebody gets injured in that fire, the question is going to be, did the church know that fires happen? Well, obviously, yes, right?
Yes.
What did they do to mitigate that risk?
Mhm.
And if the answer is nothing, you're in deep kimchi, right?
Yeah.
You're in deep trouble.
Absolutely.
You gotta take care of that. So now we go to your team. Okay, so now you have a team of volunteers that are serving in that safety capacity.
Mhm.
And that has the initial appearance of looking like a really good step, right? Because
Mhm.
we're acknowledging that there's risk and there's
Right.
threats out there,
Right.
and we're trying to set up a team that's paying attention and
Mhm.
available to respond to emergencies. But now it's like, well, then what did you do to prepare them?
That's right.
You
That's
have to
right.
know that some of them are going to tend to not react. Some of them are going to tend to overreact. And what we need to see is that you've acknowledged that risk and you're pulling the crazy guys in the right direction. You're pulling the conservative in the right direction, and
Right.
you're giving them some real direction and some real training so they can act responsibly.
That's right. Now, let me ask you, what gaps do you often see in volunteer teams?
Yeah, as far as training or
First training.
yeah, so there are a lot of teams out there that kind of put the gun first idea, right?
Okay.
And so they go to the range. They have regular conversations, maybe even training events at the church, all for the active shooter.
Okay.
And then they neglect the other stuff. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't focus on the potential for a violent intruder.
Absolutely.
However, there's that's about protecting life, of course, right?
Right.
But the thing is, there's something else about protecting life, and it's far more likely to occur, and that's medicals.
Absolutely.
Right. So my
Absolutely.
thing is look across your congregation. The more gray hair you see and round bellies, you're going to have a medical. Right.
I
And so
love how you put that. Go ahead.
so if we're interested in protecting lives,
Right.
we need to get medical training.
That's
Right.
true.
We need
That's
to be
true.
trained medically. Maybe it's from the American Red Cross or whatever, some reputable organization. Let's get certified. Let's look at equipment. Let's do that kind of thing. Then the next stuff, with people that are worried more about the violent intruder because that's fun or exciting.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, okay, well, if all you do is go to the range, what you've done is you've trained everyone to be a hammer. And if everyone's trained to be a hammer, everything will look like a nail. And so we can't just focus there. We have to also consider less lethal tools or things that we could use. We need to get into verbal de-escalation. Let's say,
how about that? Yes.
Yeah, in the last 10 to 12 years, if we've learned anything, verbal de-escalation, de-escalate, 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 de-escalate.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about what are the gaps we're missing, we're all about guns and violent intruders. Okay, what about the rest?
Yes. Yes, that's very well said. Now, well, let me ask you a practical question. If a church has a security team or safety team in place, but no formal training, what should they do first?
They need to start getting training done as quickly as they possibly can. Let's bring in a Red Cross or American Heart Association instructor, and let's first knock out a Saturday of first aid CPR training.
Okay.
Let's talk about potentially then buying any medical equipment that they would be qualified to use after that training is done. That's something that's very easy for a church to do. And the thing is there's no rub against it, right? There's no
There's no resistance to that. Yes.
Hey, we're now ready for heart attacks. Whose idea was that? Nobody's going to be against that. It's an easy win, and it's a big step in the right direction. Then from there, maybe bring in a de-escalation instructor. And the truth of the matter is for most people in the country, medical personnel are trained in de-escalation. Teachers, public schools are taught in de-escalation. Colleges are, teach their professors de-escalation. The truth of the matter is there's probably an instructor near you.
Yes, that's very well said. That's very well said. Well, sir, I'm going to pivot a little bit here, and we're going to talk about the leadership gaps that create risk. Okay? And I'm going to ask you, what leadership gaps create the greatest vulnerability in churches?
The biggest one is just ignoring it. Something gets stolen, we ignore it. There's an altercation, we write it off as a one-off event. We just ignore all risk. And God's going to protect us, and certainly that's true.
Yes, it is.
At the same time, the way I understand my theology is that we participate in what God's doing. I love the story of King David going up against Goliath.
Yes.
If you read that story, there is no question in your mind that it was God that was with him and working through him. However, before David even got there, he was using his sling to fight off predators that came after the flock. And to modernize that a little bit, on a regular basis, he went to the range and shot his 9mm. He called it a sling and a stone.
Yes.
And so two things can be true at the same time. Yes, God protects us. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes. But we participate in that by being obedient and preparing. And so that's the big thing that churches will do. They'll either ignore it, or if they acknowledge it, now they're not participating in owning it. So a lot of times churches will be like, hey, Dr. Mike, I got this great idea. You're going to run our safety team and, be blessed, be filled, go make it happen. Yeah. And then they never have to think about it again.
And that leads me to another question right there. Okay, Mr. Maloney, what happens when leadership delegates, but they stay disengaged?
Yeah, what you end up with is somebody that's out there all by themselves, making the best decisions they feel like they can make, and they're not supported by the church. And the truth of the matter is once you start a safety team, it's very likely that there will be some frictions, some things that have to be worked through, some negotiations, some restructuring of things. I mean, if you got kids area and you're not doing background checks for your volunteers, that's got to be, you know, that's going to be a new requirement that people have to accept. Maybe you don't have a good check-in, check-out procedure. That means you're going to have to train your precious volunteers how to operate a new check-in, check-out procedure. Or maybe it's fire. We're going to have a practice or a training event of what we do in an event of a fire. That means we're involving the ushers. And because of all the change, and because people that are used to not having to do anything now have this new requirement, there's going to be pushback.
Absolutely.
So that's where the pastor comes in and says, hey, we just put Dr. Mike in charge of a safety ministry, and we want you to work with him as these programs and as we start to change and develop things. And then if there's a problem, the pastor, the leadership, whoever that is, needs to be involved and engage and say, listen, I understand you used to be able to just do what we did, but we have to change that. And so I need cooperation. Without that, you'll just be banging your head up against a wall.
Absolutely.
Because who are you? Who are you to tell the children's director how to run their section? Who are you to tell the ushers what they're supposed to do?
You're right.
We need pastoral leadership support, or it dies on the vine.
So now, how do you get leadership buy-in, sir? This is the golden ticket question. How do you do it?
So one, talk their language. Hey, pastor, the safety team is actually about hospitality. More than anything else, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be shaking hands and kissing babies. Anyone we don't know or we don't know well we're not being mean or interrogating them or anything. Instead, we're going up and say, hey, welcome to ABC Church. I'm so glad you're here today. What brings you in today? And then you start a conversation with them. If they're up to no good or carrying a sign, we know something's up, and then we have to deal with it based on what we're sensing from them or what we're picking up from them. But other than that, we're shaking hands, kissing baby. We're out in the parking lot, and we're welcoming people and guiding them, and people, 99.9% of them, are going to see that as hospitality and welcoming, and you're going to be the nicest church in town.
That's right.
But on the back end of it, we're evaluating.
There it is.
We're evaluating.
You see, stay vigilant. Yes. So let me ask you, now this is for the security leaders who will be watching this stream. What's one conversation every security leader needs to have with their pastor?
Yeah. The first one is, I need you engaged. This is not assign me and let me go. This is not the militant idea stuff that we have going on here, but it is something that we have to take very seriously. And that's going to mean human resources being used. It's going to be maybe some financial commitment to some of these things in order for us to do this right. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're providing an environment where people can, worship, study, and pray without the distractions of risk. So if we're going to do this, pastor, let's do it right. It's going to take time. It's going to take commitment. That's the other thing I would add to that is if you had somebody working 40 hours a week on nothing but the safety ministry, in 3 to 5 years, they'd have the ministry they always wanted. It takes time to do it and do it right. So pastor, put on your patience and your endurance. We're on a new journey, and it's going to take us some time.
There you go. That's well said. Okay, we're going to pivot again. I'm going to give you a scenario, okay? And we're going to call this the we'll figure it out church, okay? So a church has a volunteer security team, but no written plan, no formal training, and no defined roles. Leadership believes that they will figure it out if something happens. So now In this scenario, what concerns you immediately?
What you're planning for is you're planning for complete chaos.
Absolutely.
You're planning, no plan is not a plan.
Mhm.
Hope is not a course of action.
No,
We
it's
have
not.
to have plans. Think of, there was a church not too long ago. They told me what happened. A guy came in, he approached the pastor on the front. He was very boisterous. He was clearly angry about the church's position on in particular ideology.
Right.
And there was this huge, it was a big mess.
Mhm.
And the team that had no training, never even really coordinated, they were just a bunch of guys with guns that would occasionally talk about what they would do if a bad guy came in. Right? And so then what happened is nobody acted, nobody dealt with this. So finally, somebody had the sense to call the police. Police showed up and took the guy out of there. But during this whole time, the pastor is trying to deal with this. There, you have this whole congregation. You can just imagine the pastor's phone.
Yes.
On Monday.
Yes.
Ringing off. People no longer feel safe there. They don't, I can't come back. What about my kids? What about this? And I had grandma with me and all this you have nothing here. And then the pastor brought in the team and he had some words.
Oh, yes. With
the team.
Yes, and I'm sure they weren't kind.
And it was and then in that conversation, there's the discovery phase of all you guys are gun-toting parishioners, pistol-packing parishioners, if you will. That's all you are? Well, then what are we doing here?
Right.
And so then they contacted me.
Okay, there you go.
Time to train.
So now, there you go. So they contacted you, Mr. Maloney. Now I'm going to ask you, what in that same scenario, what is the first corrective step that you would tell leadership to take?
So I have a training first philosophy.
Okay.
We certainly have to do the other end, policies and procedures and insurance, and the whole structure has to be built. And like I said, in 3 to 5 years, you'll be done building the structure. It takes time. It takes working with the attorney. While that's occurring, which instinctively we want to do that first, you're unprotected, right? That's 3 to 5 years of nothing. So I have a training first philosophy that says, listen, let's get some baseline training for all of the safety team. Because as soon as that's done, your church is suddenly safer.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? As soon as they're trained. The other thing is talk about that legal part we were talking about before. By training a team, what happens if something happens, then it's like, hey, did you identify that fire was a thing, that medical was a thing, that verbal de-escalation was a thing, that all these things are a thing? Yes, we did. And what we did is we had a group of volunteers go through this comprehensive training to prepare them.
Right.
So you're safer and you've already made your self-liability a little bit more protected.
There you go.
And then we got to build the structure then too, right? So, sometimes it's like 2 things are going on at a time. Get the team trained, and then let's start working on policies and procedures and insurance and on and on and on and on.
Okay, so let me ask you. So just a practical takeaway for people that are watching the stream here. What are 3 foundational steps every church should take in the next 30 to 60 days?
Yeah, the next 30 to 60 days. The first thing that I would do is I would establish a process, a vetting process for people that will be on your safety team. So that's application, that's interview, that's background check, that's checking their references. Formalize this so you're identifying people that can actually serve as a representative of the church. The next thing is the pastor needs to stand up this new ministry, and it needs to be in writing. So it could just, whoever's in charge of your church needs to say, on this date at this time, we're establishing a safety ministry, and these are going to be their responsibilities. So we've established the team. We got we've been selective about who's on the team. And now, you said 3 things. Get that training started.
Okay.
Get that training started over those next that first part.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, then we're going to come to a close here, and I'm going to get you out of here. Okay, we're going to go from awareness to action. So now I'm going to give you a reflection question. So, Mr. Maloney, what's the first step a church should take after listening to this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. I would put together either at a board level or elder board level or whatever, churches, all the governance is all different. It's time for a conversation.
All right.
Time for a conversation. We know the world is changing. We know we need to participate with God to safeguard our guests, our members, our visitors of the church. What steps are we willing to take, or early first steps we can take to start addressing this issue and stop pretending?
There you go.
In here.
So now, how can churches move forward, just like you say, without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, so it's, a little bit like eating the elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Okay.
A lot of times pick one program. We talked about medical. It's life and death. Put together maybe just a medical program. Hey, let's get some people trained in first aid CPR. Let's get some equipment. Let's be intentional about grandma having a heart attack, right? Let's do that. Something basic. Or maybe it's fire evacuation for the children's ministry. Let's put together a fire evacuation. The reason I like to start with fire evacuation is because who would be against it?
Nobody.
You'd be crazy if why are we doing this? Don't we trust God? Oh, come on.
Okay.
So start with, I like to call those easy wins.
Yes.
Let's just get an easy win under our belt, because you learn so much, right? Because you have to work with other ministry leaders and other volunteers, and do it on something where you don't have to argue about it. We're just doing it, and we can work together. A committee can work it out and put it all together. Just start small. If the church wouldn't even do that, I have even a step earlier than that.
Okay.
One of the steps you can even do before that is just starting creating a culture of safety. And some of the things that you can do is like a hands-only CPR course, which tends to be cheap. And you can invite everybody in the church, right?
That's
as many
true.
people as you can get packed in there. And then when people are like, hey, this is a neat idea, they start to think in safety and security. Another thing that you could do is sometimes a women's self-defense class hosted at your church. You can bring in somebody from the outside that'll do a little seminar for the women, women and young women at church. And what you've done is you've had a very community church serving event.
Okay.
Now people are starting to say, this was great. They're going to love it. But they're going to start thinking about safety and security.
That's
if depending on where you are in the country, a fun shoot. Yeah. Get a bunch of people together, go out to the range, make some burgers and hot dogs and some cold drinks and fire your weapons and all this kind of stuff. And it's just fun. But people are starting to think now.
Yeah, you see, you started the wheels turning. And like you mentioned, I always tell people when I go into a church, I tell the leaders, let's start with the low-hanging fruit. Yeah. Let's go there. Let's not go to the full ramp up right off the beginning, because that you're gonna meet resistance. So we want to encounter the least amount of resistance as possible, and then just ramp up purposefully but slowly, so people can digest it, and so they will get that level of pushback. So I got one last question for you. What encouragement would you give to leaders that are hesitant to act?
As a pastor, you are a shepherd, and ultimately you are responsible for the guests and the visitors that come to your church. You have a responsibility there. Certainly their spirituality is extremely important. I'm not taking away from that, but also their physical safety. You're responsible for that. And even though this is scary, maybe this is something you've never thought of before. Maybe you have no idea where to go, and so you're overwhelmed by, I know nothing, and I have to wander into this space that I know nothing in. One, find somebody. There's somebody at your church that can help you. But the other thing is, it's your responsibility. I hate to be the guy. but it's your responsibility.
It is.
You have to be intentional. Now, I'm not talking machine gun nests and hand grenades, but
Okay.
let's, do the medical. Do the medical. One program at a time, and you'll be fine. Usually somebody rises to the top. Somebody will rise to the top, and they will be somebody who's highly faithful. Maybe they look a little bit like the deacon qualifications in the Bible. And that's going to be your guy or gal. I'm in Minnesota. I say guy, it's like saying y'all. It's everybody.
Yeah. Understood.
And that person is going to be able to take this, and just with them too. Don't get overwhelmed. Let's just do one thing at a time. Medical. Maybe it's fire. Maybe it's severe weather. Maybe wherever you are in a car. We all know what our risks are, right?
Yes.
And let's just one thing at a time and just start checking off the list.
There you go.
And
just be
5
systematic.
Years, you'll look at your done list and you'll be like, wow, we're
Yeah, there you go. We're making progress.
We're in good shape. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Maloney. Just hang out with me for a little while longer. Just want to make a quick announcement and we'll wrap up, okay? So, sir, conversations like the one we had are exactly why we're going to be bringing together leaders from across multiple disciplines. They're going to be from training, physical security, cybersecurity, and emergency management to help churches take a more systematic, structured approach to preparedness. So later this season, we're going to be announcing the Faith Secure National Church Leadership Forum, where we're going to go deeper into these topics. And I may be reaching back out to you again, sir. Okay. So I just want to end by saying preparedness is not about perfection. It's about taking responsibility. And you can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility. So I want to thank you, Mr. Maloney, for joining us on the Faith Secure podcast. You did an outstanding job.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Mike.
All right. Thank you for dropping those nuggets. And I also want to thank you, the viewers. If you would like more information on church security consultation, please connect with us directly at mdbconsultingagency.com/Faith Secure. Until the next episode, remember to stay watchful, prayerful, and prepared. God bless.